It's easy to see from the map that we're headed to Wyoming, where the majority of Yellowstone National Park can be found in the state's upper left corner, although some of the park also extends into Idaho and Montana. The Yellowstone National Park is a national treasure that spans an enormous 3,472 square miles, about the size of Puerto Rico, and where scientists have made terrifying discoveries that could alter the course of history. Don't miss out as we unveil these incredible findings. Most people think that Yellowstone National Park is one of the best national parks in the world. It is in fact the first national park in the world, which was about 20 years before Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana even became official US states. When the first people to visit Yellowstone tried to tell news magazines what they saw, they were told, "Thank you, but we don't print fiction." Their death was easy to understand because the features were just too good to be true. Yellowstone is so amazing that you have to see it to believe it. It has beautiful hot springs, mud pots, and waterfalls. Yellowstone is like nothing else on Earth, and there is something exciting for everyone from kids to old people. Yellowstone, which opened in 1872 and is mostly in Wyoming, is still one of the most popular national parks in the country, with millions of visitors each year. Yellowstone is one of the biggest national parks in the United States. It covers almost 3,500 square miles and includes parts of Montana and Idaho. Yellowstone National Park is on top of a sleeping supervolcano that could erupt with a force of 8. Some parts of the park are only 3 miles from molten rock or magma. There are also more geysers and hot springs in the park than anywhere else on Earth. This truly unique national park has a lot to see, from the Yellowstone Grand Canyon to the largest herd of buffalo in the United States to grizzly bears and wolves. About half of the world's hydrothermal features can be found in Yellowstone National Park. This makes the Grand look like it's on fire. Old Faithful is the most famous geysers. It's just one of the most famous and well-known natural wonders in the United States. Native Americans gave Yellowstone its name because of their river's distinctive yellow sandstone. The Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, often cited as the supposed inspiration for the name Yellowstone. Sandstone from the Yellowstone River in eastern Montana, hundreds of miles downstream and northeast of the park, is where Monica first appeared, proving that legends about the park's origins were correct all along. Although Yellowstone is a sight to behold, the park is also home to some terrifying natural events. The first one we'll discuss is so bad that just thinking about it can make you shiver. The colorful Yellowstone hot springs are beautiful to look at and photograph, but what happens if a tourist accidentally falls in? Let us first establish that going for a swim in any of the hot springs is an awful idea. We are only evaluating how bad of an idea this is. One of the world's largest magma bodies lies beneath this volcano's caldera, fueling an upwelling plume of extremely hot material. Because of the dynamic and violent underground plumbing, surface water bodies like the numerous geysers and springs are typically extremely acidic, extremely hot, and lethal to animal life. In 2016, an unlucky individual disregarded the numerous warnings posted throughout the park and dipped his finger into one of the Yellowstone's numerous hot springs. Not only did he fall in and die, but he also disintegrated within 24 hours. What happened to his body when he fell into the water, despite the fact that we can assure you it was a dreadful way to die? The first thing he noticed was that his body felt as if it were immersed in water at approximately 93 degrees Celsius, 199 degrees Fahrenheit. It would hurt like nothing you could possibly imagine, but only for as long as his nervous system could register pain, which, depending on your perspective, won't be more than a minute. At this temperature, the epidermis of the late visitor's skin quickly deteriorated and began to disintegrate, and his blood vessels in the underlying dermis ruptured, resulting in rapid blood loss. Some underlying skin layers, as opposed to decomposing, lost all of their water and became leathery and blackened. His underlying subcutaneous fat would soon also begin to bubble off. All of this, which is known as a full-thickness burn, occurred in less than 1 minute. His nervous system went into shock and sustained irreparable damage. At this time, his organs had begun to fail, although the extreme heat stress had already caused some of them to shut down. The acidity of the water then takes over completely, causing death in 2 to 3 minutes. Some of the hot springs have mildly alkaline waters, but many, including the one the visitors fell into at Norris Geyser Basin, are extremely acidic, with pH values around 2. The lower the value, the more acidic the water. With such high levels of acidity and at such high temperatures, not even the skeleton has a chance. Within a few hours in the water, the visitor had disintegrated into nothing. That was shocking, but there's more. A major tourist attraction in Yellowstone isn't what it used to be. Actually, it could be completely shut down soon. Old Faithful is slowing down, lamented Rick Hutchinson, who has studied the park's most popular attraction since 1970. A day could just stop working altogether, he continued. Average wait times were 66 minutes when I first arrived in 1970. In the 1990s, Mr. Hutchinson proclaimed, "Today it is 77 minutes." Regularity increased in the 1970s. There was a plus or minus 5-minute window in our original forecast. Now it's a plus or minus 10-minute window. The margin for error has grown to significant proportion. Surveyor General Henry Washburn and businessman and politician Nathaniel Langford of Montana gave the geysers its nickname Old Faithful at the beginning of an expedition in the early 1850s because of its consistent performance. In 1871, geologist Ferdinand Hayden, who led a follow-up scientific expedition, remarked that Old Faithful had earned the nickname Guardian of the Valley, due to the consistency with which its eruptions occurred. The delicate equilibrium of heat and water needed to keep Old Faithful's geysers regularly erupting, a fountain of hot water and steam from its intricate underground plumbing may go unappreciated by many of the geyser's visitors. So what's wrong with Old Faithful? Well, the geyser went dormant hundreds of years ago, probably because the water part of the equation was out of whack. The geyser stopped erupting near the end of the so-called medieval climate anomaly. This is when long periods of warm, dry weather happened in many places around the world. A paleoclimatologist at Montana State University in Bozeman, Kathy Whitlock, said it was during this time that grapes grew in northern England and sea ice melted, which made it possible for people to find Greenland. We know that it was warmer and drier in Yellowstone. There were more fires during that time and the upper tree line was higher up the slopes. There was also less steam flow. She also said that the area had been very dry for decades. Researchers have also found that changes in the ground caused by earthquakes can change how often geysers erupt. This is probably one of the main reasons why Old Faithful erupts on average every 94 minutes instead of every 60 to 65 minutes like it did in the 1950s. Researchers looked for signs of big earthquakes around the time that Old Faithful was quiet, but they didn't find any, so they think that dry weather was to blame. Droughts are happening again in the Yellowstone region. In 2008, a group of scientists published a paper showing that years with less rain at the end of the 20th century and beginning of the 21st century probably added a minute or two to the time it takes for Old Faithful to erupt. This time, it's most likely because of the global warming caused by humans. If the climate keeps getting drier, the geyser might stop working completely. If you want to see Old Faithful in Yellowstone before it stops working, be ready for earthquakes. In fact, there are a lot of them because multiple earthquakes happen every day in the national park. This isn't surprising because Yellowstone is a seismically active area, but how often do earthquakes happen in the park? On average, between 1,500 and 2,000 earthquakes happen every year in Yellowstone National Park. Let's look at data from 2010 to 2019 to learn more about this average. During these 3,652 days, University of Utah's seismograph stations recorded 17,243 earthquakes in the Yellowstone area. This gives a daily average of 4.7 earthquakes, or 1 every 5.1 hours. But because half of these things happen in groups, they don't happen evenly over time. As a comparison, UUSS found 14,080 earthquakes in the Utah region over the last 10 years, which is an average of 3.9 earthquakes per day, or 1 every 6.2 hours. In reality, those scientists aren't even finding every earthquake that happens in Yellowstone or anywhere else. The number of placement and seismometers in a region directly affects how well it can record and locate earthquakes. When an earthquake happens, seismic energy spreads out in all directions. But as it moves away from the earthquake's source, its power decreases. To find out where and when an earthquake started, it needs to be recorded on at least 4 stations. Because of this, it is hard to record and locate very small earthquakes if you don't have a dense seismic area because you can't record small earthquakes on enough stations. Small earthquakes lose their energy too quickly to be recorded by the seismic network. In the last few years, the biggest earthquake was a magnitude 4.8 in Hap Norris's Geyser Basin in March 2014 and was felt throughout the area. What do you think? Would you visit Yellowstone National Park? If so, always remember to bring the things you need and don't forget to stay safe. Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell if you want to see more content like this. That is all for today. I'll see you in the next video.